Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is why I disagree with the famous Col Douglas MacGregor. I know it's going to be a very dangerous narrative that I'm going to follow, but I'm specifically referring to a video he made with Judge Napolitano, and it's called "The Complete Destruction of Ukraine is Unavoidable." Now, I've been listening to him before, and the Colonel is a quite forceful person, typical of a military commander. He speaks with authority, he speaks with conviction, and he is intimidating. So whatever you say, whatever he says, you tend to believe because it's a person of authority and supposed to have know-how. And but I've listened to some of his previous videos with Napolitano, and he mentioned some numbers about the Second World War and the Russian casualties and so on. And I thought to myself, whoa, that is not right. I'm not going to call that. I talked about 20 million Russian soldiers died, and another 20 million civilians died, and etc. etc. I can't remember now all the detail, but that was more or less. And he talked about some other stuff which I didn't agree with, but it was not worth my while to make a video about this whole story. But since this is now part 3 of the series of videos that I'm making, because I am on the warpath, I decided, okay, let's see what Colonel McGregor has to say. And well, I made some notes. Let's call him Judge. Maybe Napolitano is a long name, Judge. Okay. In any case, he started off with some stuff that was okay. Before I actually start, I do not disagree with everything he says. Please keep that in mind. He talks a lot of other stuff that is true, which I can agree, and that is not in dispute. But the stuff I do talk about, that's where the stuff where I disagree. Now, I can also, like I said, go the Andrei Martinov road and go and talk about the credentials of this colonel. But there's a wiki page of him, and that's quite long, and I'm not going to talk really about that. Consider him to be a fairly knowledgeable military commander. He has a lot of experience. He was a consultant to the Secretary of Defense, but he only lasted 3 months, and then he was sort of let go. In any case, so maybe that should say you something. Maybe he didn't agree with the narrative that the US government wants to follow, or there were some other reasons, but that's not for me to judge. Just a little bit of tidbit, if you want to call it. In any case, they start off with discussing the statement made by Blinken about that Russia's policy, its US policy that Russia must withdraw to the borders of 2024 in February. Before that, that means Crimea stays and is out of the rest of the Ukraine. But I fully agree. The colonel said that's a no point, and I fully agree with that as well. It's a non-issue. They cannot go on like that. It's not going to settle any disputes. But then let me just keep my notes here. Yeah. And then they talked about the nuclear issues and the nuclear strike. And Judge asked him about this. Has Putin changed his mind and so on? And the colonel sort of, yes, he says Putin has made his mind and so on. And now Putin is going to review the military doctrine. And since it is the policy of the US to consider first strike options on the table, and they're not going to withdraw that. But it is a Biden decision, and in his opinion, that's the wrong one. Well, let me first correct him. This is not a Biden decision. I have made a video about the story about nuclear strikes, first strike. It has been a policy for a long time for the US. And I think before even Bush started it, from there on, every president has just reaffirmed that nuclear posture of a first strike. Went through Bush, went through Obama, went through Donald Trump, and now it's through to Joe Biden, and hasn't changed much. And the Russians are aware of that. But also, if you read the nuclear doctrine of the US, they will not use it against anybody. They will certainly not use it in Ukraine or against Russia, because they know what the consequences are. And I also made a video about the doomsday machine that the Russians have, and if you have that, then forget about it. But in any case, so coming back, so very forcefully, he says that Putin has changed his mind. Putin has said now he will reconsider his option, and they might even implement nuclear first strike. And unfortunately, that is not true. So I will read about a summary of a partial summary of what he said in a recent speech. And it says, the US has long had a doctrine of launching a disarming attack against command and control systems, for which they had developed cruise missiles the Soviet Union lacked, Putin said. Now Russia has hypersonic missiles that are more modern and even more effective. So perhaps we should think about adopting the developments and ideas of our American partners when it comes to ensuring security. Nothing about nuclear weapons. While the US doctrine envisages a preemptive nuclear strike, Russia's doctrine is about retaliation. Putin explained. If the Russian early warning system detects a missile attack, hundreds of our missiles will fly and will be impossible to stop them. While some attacking missiles will strike Russia, nothing will remain of the enemy. And that is how nuclear deterrence works, he explained. See, nothing has changed his mind. He's not going to change Russia's policy to a first strike. All he says is that should the Americans try to do it, they must remember we have hypersonic missiles, and our doctrines clearly states, should you attack us, hundreds of missiles will fly. We will intercept a lot of these missiles, but you will be destroyed. But naturally, it's a colonel talking with a bombastic military, self-assured type of voice. You can assume that that is correct. All right, and then he also talked about aircrafts, American NATO or US bomber that are stationed in Europe that can carry nuclear bombs and so on. And there's even a battle group in the Mediterranean, and all of these can carry nuclear bombs. But it doesn't really matter. It's not a threat to Russia per se, as is. They knew these nuclear bombs have been long time stationed in Germany, Netherlands, and Italy. I've made a video about that as well, and the capability and the limitations, and how you can use it, not use it. And then you can also think about the Mediterranean. The Russians have also the fleet and can destroy that battle group. And you don't really want to go there. That is Third World War III and destruction of everybody. So it's a non-event. And then again, like in a very assured way, he talked about that Russia has now accumulated 540,000 combat troops in the west of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, and that is partially true. It's not combat troops, it just is troops. And we know that from reports that about 9,000 Russian troops are in Belarus, only 9, and they are there to train together with the Belarus army because Belarus feared an invasion from Poland, because Poland were amassing some troops on the border. And that is why they were sent there. And if you remember, we saw some videos of trains carrying artillery pieces, tanks, trucks, etc., long trains crossing certain road sections or road crossings. And we know that they have been. But they have been now there for about a month ago, I believe. And well, he mentioned that and says, oh, this is now a reason for Putin to go and conquer Ukraine and then move past Ukraine and then go take on NATO. And if NATO would then respond, they won't be able to do it. They wouldn't have enough manpower and equipment and etc., etc. I am planning on making a video about this statement. This narrative that the West cannot defend itself, that is running out of weapons, that it doesn't have the manpower, and all this other anti-type of NATO narrative, which I cannot agree with anymore. The facts just don't support it. I will make a video about that. And then you can see and decide for yourself what the real situation is. In any case, Putin is not planning on conquering Ukraine and then moving on to the other countries, unless NATO decides that's it. It's going to oppose Russia in its aims, and then we have World War III. Nowhere ever has Putin stated such objectives. They have stuck to their guns, and they have their three demands, or three objectives. And I feel sometimes that Col MacGregor shoots from the hips, yeah, like a typical Texan cowboy, and makes statements which are not substantiated, in any case. So, again, on the same speech of Putin, he says, they ask him about the prospect of another mobilization, and he said, another call-up isn't being considered, Putin said, when asked if more Russians will be drafted into the army in 2023. Of the 300,000 that have been mobilized, so far, some 150,000 have been deployed. Only 150,000 have been deployed. But only 77,000 are attached to fighting units. That even doesn't mean that they are combat troops. They have just been attached to fighting units, while others are engaged in other duties at the moment. Half of those called up are battle reserves, so why would anyone talk of additional call-up? Putin concluded. So we're talking about, everybody's talking about this huge extra 300,000 men that are coming to the front. But I've explained in other videos as well, most of the troops are support troops and other artillery and stuff like that, and logistical. Not only a percentage of that is usually for fighting, and it's the same problem on the Ukrainian side. They have the same problems, or the same more or less utilization of troops. And even half of them are not even going to be committed to the front. They're going to be kept in the reserves. They probably receive some special training for special equipment, maybe like that. I'm not sure, but we all don't know. Who really knows? So again, it means nothing. Later on, he gets his facts right and so on about the numbers, but you have to question whether he meant it in that specific context. And if a person like that talks to you, then you will believe him. And then he talked about, about the drone attacks on the airfields deep inside Russia. Now, I'm not sure where he gets the stuff from, but he's speculating like some, he talks about that more information is coming out now that these drones were launched from inside Russia because the borders between Ukraine and Russia are porous and one can easily cross them and so on and so on and so on. But he also admits that this is a huge missile, the Tu-141, which is now being sort of identified. So how are you going to smuggle that in? I don't know. And then bring it nearer to the airfield and then undetected, and then you're going to launch it. This huge thing, you're going to launch. How are you going to launch it? You can only mount it on a truck and then shoot it like a truck, like a multiple rocket launcher type of thing. And that would have been detected either by satellite or by the population or by any. No. You can't do that kind of stuff. Not even a covered truck and so on. In any case, then he suggested that, this drones were not detected by the Russians because these drones might have used commercial airline routes. Huh? Maybe they could have implanted a transponder on that. Huh? So you're going to put a commercial airline transponder onto a missile, so it's sort of camouflage as an aircraft, which is not, it's not even half the size of that. It's not even a quarter of the size of that, of a commercial airline. And then the worst thing about commercial airliners, you know, there are no flights between Russia and Europe. Huh? How does it work? Oh yes, there are some Russians maybe to Belarus. But each aircraft has to, it's put on its transponder. You know from where it comes from. That is tracked by digital internet. You can watch any aircraft where it is at any given moment because of its transponder. And if suddenly a plane appears and suddenly you put on its transponder, then that discrepancy is immediately type of noticed. I mean, then surely you're going to start suspecting it. So suddenly there's no transponder, and then suddenly there's a signal. No, it doesn't work like that. The military, Russian military, would have type of picked it up. But my argument is that the Russians made a boo-boo. They didn't protect their strategic assets by air defense systems, which should have detected those elements. And yes, even if it's integrated air defense systems, you know, you got to see how long are the borders? How many air defense systems do you have? How many radar systems you have? What area do they cover? They surely cannot cover the whole type of border of Russia. They cannot cover every single inch of Russia with a radar. So what you do is, again, that's the purpose of air defense systems, to protect strategic assets, which the Russians haven't done it, in spite of that they are actually at war with another country. You know, the Russians are not superhumans. They are not super soldiers. They are human beings just like us. And they make mistakes like everybody else. But not according to the pro-Russian commentators. In any case, the Tu-141 is in any case a modified version of an old Soviet missile. And I've spoken about that. There are some reports that the missile development company in Ukraine has now been successful in manufacturing long-distance UAVs. And as soon as they acknowledge that, then this missile attack happens. So there's a good chance that that company is referring to these type of missiles. A good chance. Doesn't mean it is like that, but a good chance. High probability. And if it's this missile, the Tu-141, then it's a very, very low-flying missile. And it's hard to detect by normal radar. And that's probably why the real reason why it was detected until it was basically too late. But a military air defense system would have picked it up. But it didn't. That's too bad. But that's not what Colonel Expert Douglas MacGregor has said. And like I said, if you listen to his voice and the way that he talks, he intimidates you, and you will believe it. So you don't really ask questions. And unfortunately, I don't have a problem with that. And then they talk about another pro-Western, anti-Putin basher type of commentator, an old man who was supposed to be of the CIA. I'm not going to even discuss that chunk that is talking about. But then again, the whole thing is cuts off and says, yes, NATO is not capable. It's typical NATO bashing, US bashing, military capability, troop concentrations, yada, yada, yada. You know, unless Putin decides on a blitzkrieg type of military strategy, it's going to take months to reach the western side of Ukraine. If he intends it. If that's intention. There are talk about McGregor then tries to suggest, yeah, but they're going to enter via Belarus, cut off the Polish border from Kiev, and thereby stop the influx of Western weapons and so on. Yeah, they can do it. But they tried it with the initial phase of the SMO when they tried to encircle Kiev. And again, Ukraine is not small. It's a huge area to cover. And 9,000 Russian troops is not going to make it. You probably need about 200,000 troops and a lot of armor to do that. And it's not going to be slow paced in any case. And then, like I said, if Russia wants to move from the east, it's going to take a lot of time. And when that happens, NATO can decide whether it wants to commit or not, whether it's existential or not, or whether they're going to dump Ukraine and leave it at the mercy of the Russians and try to blame Russians afterwards with their ineffective sanctions and I don't know what else. But nobody knows at this stage what's going to happen. If I look at what is happening now, the current situation of Sorovico is to consolidate the military, free the area or free Donetsk city from continuous civilian bombardment. So he would like to drive back whatever forces are currently bombing Donetsk. I believe that finally he made that decision. Then there's a battle for Bakhmut, which I don't understand, but then I'm not a military expert, so I'm not sure about the strategic value of Bakhmut. Maybe it's that they have to conquer Bakhmut because Bakhmut is part of Donbass. And they have been going for a while, and the Ukrainians have significantly protecting that Bakhmut. So it's a good place to grind down the so-called Ukrainian forces. And therefore by weakening the Ukrainian army. And in the northern part in Kharkiv, I don't know. It's still, I wouldn't concentrate on that that much if I was the commander. But I see the priorities of those two areas. And then they will decide what is going to happen and how they're going to move forward. And just remember, logistics takes time. Planning takes time. Winter is here. So maybe another couple of weeks before they start this big offensive. That should be more or less right. I don't think they care about Christmas or New Year. But in any case, nobody knows. I'm not going to make suggestions or any planning or give you any ideas what's going to happen because I don't know. And we will only know once it's happening. In any case, that's my story for today. If you like what you heard, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the words. Let's get enough subscribers to do some live debates. And until next time, cheers.